Welcome into FFPC Insider Access Live here on the Better Sports Network. It is January 29th, 2026. I'm your host, Eric Balkman. You may know me from the Fantasy Football Players Championship, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. I am joined tonight by offensive line savant and a fantasy football ball knower. You connect with him on the X at Fornek DF. Of course, check out his work at FTN, RotoBaller, and Player Profiler. He is Dan Fornek. Dan, welcome in. Good evening to you, sir. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to tonight. Let's just talk some ball. Let's have some fun.
So the pride of Indianapolis joins me tonight, Dan Fornek, and I have to ask you, a lot of the guys I know, I should say just guys, but a lot of the analysts I know who are offensive line analysts and experts have played the position before. Do you have experience playing offensive line in real life?
I do. I was a 3-year letter winner and a 2-year starter at the University of Dayton, which is a FCS level school in Dayton, Ohio. It's been a long time now, but you know, we still have the weight. You could put me on the field. I could probably hold my weight literally with everyone else, but I think my body would shut down in about 5 minutes. So
well, yeah, go Flyers, baby. This is awesome to hear. Fantastic stuff. And before we get into the meat of the program, let's give the viewers a little bit of an idea what you're doing for FTN, RotoBaller, and obviously Roto Underworld, Player Profiler as well.
Yeah, of course. So right now, it's obviously the off season. So I recently did a piece for FTN. It was kind of looking at the biggest fantasy football need for all 32 teams. It was broken down into AFC and NFC. But really right now it's kind of prospect season. So I'm looking through offensive line prospects primarily for Player Profiler, picking up work here and there for RotoBaller. I've started, or FTN, whoever needs it. And then I love putting stuff like that on social media too. So X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I keep an eye out. I do some threads, players I like, plays I like, things that I'm noticing. I'm about 5 wide receivers into the class, so I'm probably behind a lot of people, but I could talk about the top 3, 4, 5 as much as you want me to.
Yeah, which is good because I know we're going to get into at least the top 3 tonight. We'll see what happens after that. Maybe number 4 as well. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Coming up on the program tonight, we got a lot of never too early stuff going on with the FFPC. We're going to go around the NFL in the first segment. Second segment will feature Mr. Fornek and I talking about the coaching carousel. Obviously, some stuff over the last couple of weeks, last week for sure. We talk about the new offensive coordinator for Atlanta. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a new head coach. The Titans have a new offensive coordinator. We'll get into that. And then the final segment will be a meaty one tonight. A lot of beef in this one. Never too early best ball tournament targets and fades with the FFPC and break it down by position. A lot of running backs and receivers. But we'll get into some tight ends and quarterbacks as well. Players include, but are not limited to, Ashton Genty, Jordan Tyson, Colston Loveland, Bryce Young, and so much more. And that'll be the program that we have leading up until until 9 o'clock tonight, which is when we will sign off. So I mentioned the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball tournaments. They are live right now at myffpc.com. The classic $125 entry fee gets you eligible for a $40,000 grand prize. If you want to play the Superflex version, you can do that as well. A $35 entry, $10,000 grand prize. Both of those tournaments will close right as the NFL draft is starting. So get in now while the getting's good. A lot of great value can be found in those never too early tournaments. While you're there, and we'll get into some Dynasty stuff tonight a little bit as well. Dynasty and Empire Orphan teams are available at myffpc.com. Those leagues normally start at $77 and go all the way up to $5,000. However, we have teams discounted as low as $1. You're basically getting the team for free that first year. Manage it to glory. myffpc.com. We're adding new orphans there every day, so make sure you're checking that out. And, of course, the apes are back. The Big Gorilla, $350 entry, $1 million grand prize, 7 bananas, and the early Rampage tournament are live right now. So if you're joining that Big Gorilla, you are basically getting 2 entry fees for the price of 1. You'll be eligible for the $1 million grand prize. You'll also be eligible for the $25,000 early Rampage tournament grand prize as well. And introducing the little bro this year, the Baby Gorilla, $125 entry, $100,000 grand prize. If you're looking to take that next step in high stakes fantasy football, the Baby Gorilla is where to go. $125 could earn you a $100,000 grand prize. MyFFPC.com, MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Shout out to our producer, Sean Engel, tonight. Let's get into it, Dan. We'll start off with the Seattle Seahawks. Big news with them over the course of the last couple of weeks, specifically with the backfield. Kenneth Walker in the NFC Championship game, sans Zach Charbonnet, rushes 19 times for 62 yards, gets into the end zone. He also gets 4 catches for 49 yards on 4 targets. Now, here's the slant. Kenneth Walker, I think many of us, prior to that, the Seattle, help me out. Who did they play before the Rams in the playoffs? The
49ers.
Yeah. So prior to that Niners game, a lot of us, and I shouldn't say a lot of us, but I know I did. I kind of expected that Zach Charbonnet would be the lead guy for Seattle next year. They would let Kenneth Walker walk, essentially, and they'd have a guy like George Holani or maybe a day 2 or day 3 pick be the 1B to Charbonnet, but he would be the lead dog in that backfield. That all changed when Charbonnet tore his ACL. Walker is still a free agent, but Charbonnet probably not going to be able to contribute meaningful fantasy football until 2027. Kenneth Walker in the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament sits at running back 17 at 402. How do I know this? FantasyMojo.com and Fantasy Mojo on X. Darren Armani, the godfather of the FFPC Pros vs. Joes. Anytime I cite ADP data with the FFPC, it's due to Fantasy Mojo. He has him at the 402 right now. If we're drafting today, Dan, and many people are in the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament, what do we do when we're on the clock in the early 4th round? Kenneth Walker is staring us in the face. Do we select him with confidence that he'll be back in Seattle? Do we select him with confidence knowing that somebody's going to pay him to be at least the lead or the 1B guy for them? Do we ignore him completely? I don't really know what the proper way to handle this is, but we have to take a stand if we're drafting right now. How would you handle it at the moment?
I personally am completely fine drafting Kenneth Walker at that price. If he's back with Seattle, we know that he can have success. And Seattle, the only way, there is a path where I could see it going negative, and that's if Seattle wants to pull the lever on the franchise tag. And we know that that could be a sticking point for a lot of running backs, but it also might be the most logical path for them. They were probably hoping to give Charbonnet the backfield. Now that he's got the ACL, they probably want to find a way to keep Walker in tow. The problem with him for his entire career has never been the talent. It's always been injuries. Mm-hmm. We know he's talented. So if you tell me that, Kenneth Walker is going to end up playing in Seattle, then I'm absolutely fine drafting him in the 4th round, knowing that Zach Charbonnet is going to miss time. If you tell me that Kenneth Walker is going to have a new home next year and Seattle is fine with just drafting a new guy, then if a team is going to pay him in free agency, it stands to reason that they're going to give him the ball. So we see, we saw it in the first playoff game. We saw it this past week. He's a 3-down talent. He can run the ball. He's highly efficient. He can catch the ball better than we thought he ever could coming out of Michigan State. That's the kind of player where, I'm one of the ones who probably got burned on him last year in best ball, hoping for a bigger role and not getting it. But he's the kind of player that you gamble on that upside, because when he hits, he's going to hit a home run.
So regardless of what team he's on, you envision a big 2026 season from KW3.
Selfishly, I was hoping he would join my Bears, but once Charbonnet goes down with an injury, it's you have to kind of temper expectations at that point.
I totally forgot about this. You are a Bears guy, and I'm here in Northeast Wisconsin, so we might get into some Bears Packers stuff. Although I will say this, and maybe I'm off my rocker. I feel like I'm one of the more rational Packers fans, and quite frankly, and I know this is sacrilege to say, I'm kind of excited to draft guys like Williams and Burden and Loveland next year. More to come on that. But I have to ask you, that Bears playoff game where they get down 21-3 to Green Bay, there had to be a part of you that was like, despite Chicago, coming back like it was a bodily function and seemingly every single game this year, you had to think like, oh, here we go again. Green Bay just doing what Green Bay does to us in the playoffs. And yet there was a different ending this year. I got to be honest with you. I was shocked. No, I have to take that back. I was not shocked, but I was a little surprised because the Bears have been doing this all season. It had to be a tremendous feeling, though, for your Bears to get that win at Soldier Field, the first home playoff win in quite a while.
It's been, I think it was 2010. Because then 2018 was the double doink, but I may or may not. We can't confirm this. She's not here to talk or to give any credence to the story, but I may or may not have told my wife that I was ready to turn the game off at halftime out of frustration. Might have had to take a lap around the house. Probably couldn't find the remote, so just kept the game on. And all of these things could or could not have happened. It's all hypothetical, right? So, but yeah, it was a wild season, and I'm sure we can get into that a little bit more down the road. But that was a fun one. It's I think I'm gonna probably have to go on like blood pressure medicine because of a lot of those games, but that's okay. That's just getting old, right?
Yeah, it is. I'm on 3 different blood pressure medications right now. So listen, it happens to the best of us. More to come on the Bears because there's a lot we need to get into. I didn't think we'd be talking about Luther Burden, Caleb Williams, and Colston Loveland's ADP getting out of control this early in the season, but they kind of are. We'll get your thoughts on that. Let's go to the Patriots. They're playing in the Super Bowl, not this weekend, but next weekend. Rhamondre Stevenson in the AFC Championship game in what turned out to be kind of a snowstorm game in the second half. 25 carries, 71 yards in the win over the Denver Broncos. As we look forward to the drafting in 2026, which many people have already done, as I said earlier, the New England backfield is currently being selected by FFPC players, Dan, like this. Trevion Henderson, running back 16 at the 401. So basically right at that same spot where Kenneth Walker is. And then you have Rhamondre Stevenson, running back 28. He's going 12 running backs later, and he's going at the 806, 4.5 rounds later than Henderson. Listen, I'm excited about Henderson. I love drafting the young, explosive, door number 2 type guys where you don't know how good they're going to be, the mystery box. But at the same time, I think realistically, we have to look at, as long as Rhamondre Stevenson is a Patriot, he is going to be a thorn in that in the side of Henderson drafters. And I look at it from the standpoint of like, you know what? If I already have 3 running backs on my roster, maybe I only have 2 running backs on my roster. Rhamondre Stevenson staring me in the mid-8th round. That's not looking like that bad of a buy, considering I don't know if Henderson all of a sudden just shakes Stevenson in 2026. I think this is as much as we don't want to see it because we love to see Henderson take off, I think this could be another split situation where if you take Henderson in the 4th, you're going to be disappointed. How do you see it?
I think really, and I'll have, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, this year there were 9 total running backs in the NFL that had 60% of the snaps played. They had 50% of the team's rushing attempts, and they had a 10% target share. So, and there were only 9 out of the entire league. So right now we're in a version of the NFL where all of these backfields are going to be split. Right now, and we know this because we've seen it before with Mike Vrabel and even Josh McDaniels, they're fine having a bigger back who handles most of the early down work. But the trick right now is Rhamondre Stevenson is handling the pass catching duties too, because they trust him more in pass protection. I thought Trevion Henderson was good at pass pro coming out. He struggled with it as a rookie. That's not really surprising. Rookies struggle with pass protection. You're hoping that they kind of get to a place where Stevenson and Trevion Henderson are maybe alternating drives, or maybe maybe one is in for 2, one's in for 1, and then they go with a hot hand from there. But for where I'm sitting today and what I know today, I'm way more comfortable with Rhamondre Stevenson at RB28 than Trevion Henderson at RB16, even with the explosion that Henderson can provide.
I think, and we don't want to do it, right? That's not fun.
Right.
I mean, fantasy football is supposed to be fun, but at the same time, fantasy football is going to turn into be fun when you realize that you ended up getting that value on Stevenson in the 8th round as opposed to Henderson in the 4th round. At least that's the way I currently see it. It sounds like you're in the same boat as me on this as well. So yeah, it's not pleasant. It's not great, but it might help you win fantasy football games and tournaments in 2026. On the other side of the field, in that backfield for Denver, was RJ Harvey. 13 carries for 37 yards. He also gets 4 catches for 22 yards. If you look at what Harvey did, Dan, down the stretch after Dobbins got hurt, it was pretty impressive. I mean, I know he was top 10 in the NFL among running backs in both targets and catches. I also know he wasn't very efficient running the football. He had, how many touchdowns did he have this year? Like 12? Like it was a bunch of touchdowns that he had. So like RJ Harvey quietly had this, and he's one of these classic running backs where we feel as a whole, as a collective, that he didn't perform well when he actually did. The reason we don't think he performed well is because how far his ADP got shot up, after he got selected by the Broncos, with higher draft capital than we thought was going to happen. And then Denver only having J.K. Dobbins in the backfield, a guy who gets hurt a lot. And oh, by the way, spoiler alert, he got hurt again in 2025. So I think it was one of those things where we inflated his perceived value to a value that he was just never going to attain this year. That said, he is clearly, in my eyes, not going to be the standalone guy in the Denver backfield next year. He could be, battling with a guy like J.K. Dobbins again next year. Well, he will. Whether it's Dobbins or a player like Dobbins, I don't know what's going to happen. Running back 18, it's weird. We're talking about all these early fourth-round running backs. He's at the 403, running back 18 right now. How do you feel about that price for RJ Harvey in the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament? And how do you think, if it differs at all, how do you think his 2026 stat line will be different than 2025, Dan?
My fear with RJ Harvey is there was so much touchdowns aren't sticky year over year. Touchdowns are not something that players can easily replicate. Mm-hmm. And so with RJ Harvey, he was, as you said, very, very inefficient running the football. He had fewer than 3.5 yards per carry in 14 of 19 games this year. And a good number of those come after Dobbins goes down. And so what I think kind of could have happened was there were kind of two paths we could go. He could be and maintain this pass catching role, which he showed he's extremely good at. He has all that explosion in space. He can make people miss. We saw, you even saw it in the playoff game. He got a ball on the flat in their first playoff game and one cut gets a first down. Mm-hmm. But if he would have been a little bit more efficient as a runner, maybe they don't prioritize adding another player to the backfield. So I'm scared, J.K. Dobbins, he gave you 12 games this year, but what if they go out in free agency and they want more of a hammer back like Tyler Algier, someone who has shown that he's an efficient runner, somebody who moves the chains, someone who doesn't have that same health concern that Dobbins does, or they bring Dobbins back and, the first 12 weeks of the year, I think RJ Harvey off the top of my head only had 2 or 3 games where he was above a 30% snap share. Now, I don't think that's going to maintain. I think he's going to see his role grow a little bit. But if they have a steady early down back, somebody that they trust as a pass protector, somebody that they trust in those situations, if he's a 40% running back, paying RB18 in a draft, a 4th-round pick, that's tough to swallow even with all the explosion. So I hesitate because on one hand I see, okay, I absolutely see the appeal. He's an explosive pass catcher. That's what we're looking for in a running back. But, volume matters. And if he's not getting the volume in other places, it just kind of he's losing carries in the playoff game to Jaleel McLaughlin. Yeah. He's losing third down reps to Tyler Bidet. Like, these are players who he's a 2nd-round pick. These guys should not even be in the same breath as him. But yet in the playoffs, in these games where they need somebody they can rely on, he wasn't always on the field. He only had, I don't think he was above a 60% snap share in either playoff game. So that's where I'm scared with RB18.
Do you factor in a second year leap for a guy like Harvey at all, where like maybe he was kept, and you could, I guess you could make this case with Trevion Henderson too, where just these are old school meat and potato coaches that are still wanting these guys to earn their reps, to take their licks, to pay their dues, so to speak. Do you factor that in at all? Because with one of these things, like we haven't really talked about from a positive standpoint, is that the coaches just all of a sudden are like, okay, you went through your rookie year, you had some flashes, we clearly saw you learn. Now we're going to get you on the field more.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I mean, guys, but the NFL is weird. It's tricky because in one hand, you anticipate from year 1 to year 2, these players see a leap, right? Or back in the old days, it was with wide receivers, it was the year 3 leap, right? And now it's year 2. And now, if they don't produce as rookies, they're useless, right? But you absolutely should expect a player to take a step in year 2. They've acclimated to the NFL. They understand how long the season is. The coaches have seen what they could do. The fear I have is with a lot of these coaches, the NFL's become so split backfield and here's your roles that it just takes a lot more. So are these unfair prices to pay for Travion Henderson or RJ Harvey? No, absolutely not. They're fine. And I think they bake in the upside and it also provides a pretty good floor. But like at the same time, we have to be open to the idea that like Sean Payton, okay, yeah, there's the Alvin Kamara history. But before that, he was a split backfield guy. He was splitting his backfield 2-3 different ways. He's always had a second complementary piece, even Mark Ingram with Kamara. Like, so he wants to live in this place where he has these two different players, and that's fine. It's just with RJ Harvey, so much of his success down the stretch was finding the end zone that if for whatever reason he finds the end zone less, hitting that RB12, that top 10 output becomes more difficult, especially if he's only on the field for 40% of the snaps.
I think that, it could be one of those things where he's one of these ascendants, as we get, into August drafting season, people are like, oh God, it's Harvey time. Like it's going to happen. And it could be one of those things where we regret it too. A lot to follow here, a lot of beats and notes to follow in the offseason to see how Denver handles the backfield. You mentioned Algier. I think that would be a great signing for Denver if they were to pair him with RJ. Be awful for fantasy because I'm hoping Algier gets a backfield where he doesn't have to split it with Harvey or Bijan Robinson or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think that would make a lot of sense from Denver's standpoint. Okay. Mike DeRocco, and this is not, depending upon how you look at this is not great news. It could be great news, though, depending upon how your dynasty rosters shake out. Mike DeRocco covers the Jacksonville Jaguars for ESPN.com, and he says, quote, early indications are that Travis Hunter is primarily going to be a corner, and he's only going to have a package of plays in offense. Now, I will say this. I don't want to say we. I have spent a good deal over the last couple of months talking with high-stakes players, people in the industry like you, Dan, about how Jacksonville might be better off by trading Brian Thomas because he doesn't necessarily fit the Liam Cohen offense. He obviously had a really down year, and it would just make sense given that they have Hunter coming back off of injury. You had the rise of Parker Washington, and then you trade for Jacoby Myers and you ink him to an extension right away. So he's going to be part of that offense. So I've spent the last couple of months, assuming that. Then this report from DeRocco, comes out, and I'm kind of like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Like maybe I should be looking at this from the standpoint of because they have those three receivers, Myers, Thomas, and Washington, they can afford to play Hunter more on defense, only work him in when they need to. And Thomas just had a down year. Like it was a bad year. He had drops. Maybe Jacksonville's not putting a whole lot of stock into a small sample size like that, and they still believe in the player. So now I don't know what to think. Currently, I think I'm down on Hunter, and I'm maybe more high, I should say, on Brian Thomas. But this is a fluid situation until we get more information here. I think I'm going to be staying away from Hunter, and I might be buying the dip on Brian Thomas Jr. How are you handling Jacksonville Jaguars wide receivers?
So last year I stayed away from Travis Hunter because anytime you have a unicorn, anytime you have somebody who does something we've never really seen before, the highs could be super high, but the lows could also be he's a cornerback, right? And so what ended up happening was he played probably a little bit more defense. He wasn't getting targets. And then he had a really big fourth quarter against the Rams. And then the next week coming out the bye, he's hurt in practice and the season is over. But along the way, something that happened that I thought was kind of interesting. And, for the general population, we probably didn't pay too much attention to it. But when they traded away Tyson Campbell to the Browns, their number one corner, who was inked to a deal, and they got Greg Newsome back, and he's a fine player, but he's not as good or wasn't as expensive as Tyson Campbell. It opened up a situation coming into next year, 2026, where they had the bigger need at corner than they did wide receiver. And then they trade for Jacoby Myers, and then he plays well, and the offense kind of gels once they trade for Jacoby Myers. Everyone is able to kind of get into their roles and things start to click a little bit better. And so, it makes sense just from a football standpoint. If you have packages for Travis Hunter on offense, that gives you the opportunity to find ways to optimize him. But the problem is a package kind of suggests that he's not going to be a full-time player. So it's hard for me, and I'm not sure where exactly his ADP is right now. I know last year in a lot of the formats I was in, he was going as like, a 5th, 6th round pick. And I get it. They traded up and they were steadfast that he was going to play wide receiver and he was going to play cornerback, and that is going to be true. But the issue with him was always going to be, where do they need him more? And I think right now they need him more on the defensive side. So it's tough. It's really, really hard for me to push that button. But if the price gets low enough, we're gambling at a certain point. We're gambling on upside no matter what, right? You're shooting for home runs. You're trying to find somebody who's going to make their way into your lineup every once in a while. He's one of those talents. It's just, what does that role look like? And that's kind of the people were willing to eat that risk in the 5th round last year. So if, you're getting into the round 12, 13, okay, like he's going to be my wide receiver 6, 7 at that point. Yeah, I can stomach some zeros. I'm going to get guys who are going to get zeros anyway. I may draft them in the 1st round. Justin Jefferson last year.
Yeah. That's another guy too, that we got to, if you're drafting now, you got to make a stand on him. And I, quite frankly, I'm not sure I know how to handle him. If I don't know how to handle a player, I usually ignore him and I let somebody else draft him, but that's not always the case. I'm going to share some ADP data that may or may not surprise you, Dan. As far as Jacksonville Jaguars wide receivers go, in the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament right now, the number 1 wide receiver from Jacksonville being drafted right now, surprisingly, at least in my opinion, Brian Thomas, wide receiver 25 at the end of the 5th round. The next one is Jacoby Myers, but he is wide receiver 38, not going until the mid-8th. Third on this list is Parker Washington. Pretty quickly after Myers goes off the board, Parker Washington goes in the mid-9th. And then Travis Hunter has now fallen to the mid-11th round. He is wide receiver 50 right now. I know this is going to sound crazy. I still think I'm passing on him at that spot. You mentioned the fallout for having a player only having a package for him. Chances are, if that player is on the field, that defense knows, hey, this play is probably going to Hunter. And that's easier to defend when the guy is not out there on plays where the ball is not going to him, right? Travis Hunter, if we look at this in the ADP, he is going in the same neighborhood as Jordan Addison, Juwan Jennings, Khalil Shakir, Denzel Boston. I'm going to tell you this right now. Addison I'm intrigued by because he could find a different team this offseason. Where Minnesota has to kind of figure out what they're doing with him for his 5th-year option, what have you. Juwan Jennings is a free agent, so he could find himself on a new team. Khalil Shakir, we kind of know what's going on with him in Buffalo. They promoted Joe Brady. It's time is a flat circle. Buffalo is going to be Buffalo again this year. No major changes there. And then Denzel Boston is a rookie. We don't know where he's going to end up. I think there's a lot of attraction with drafting those other players, knowing what their ceiling could be when we're talking about the 11th round here, rather than Hunter, who's going to be playing corner and might only be out there for a package of plays this season. So that's probably why I'm staying away from him there. Now, if he continues to fall, you mentioned 12th, 13th round. Yeah, that's a different conversation, and we can have it if he ends up tumbling there. Okay, OTR 513 on YouTube right now. That's how I handle most problems in life. Just ignore them. Yeah, if you ignore them, they're not problems, right? Because they don't exist.
Got me this far. Got me this far.
Right. Speaking of problems, Cleveland's got a bunch of them. And this is the latest we got from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. This came out last evening. He expects the Browns to, quote, shake up the quarterback room this offseason. So Fowler is on ESPN Cleveland radio. He thinks that they're going to add to the quarterback room. Fowler mentioned Ty Simpson, who could be the second quarterback off the board at the NFL draft this April in Pittsburgh. Obviously, Malik Willis in Green Bay is going to be a free agent. You know he's not going to come back as a Packer. He's going to be somewhere, maybe Cleveland. Todd Monken is the new head coach there, a guy who's well-versed in designing offenses and has a lot of experience both at the collegiate and the professional level. Never as a head coach, but definitely as an offensive coordinator in several spots. Shadir Sanders, despite him being a Pro Bowler, was underwhelming this year. You could say the same thing about Dylan Gabriel. We don't know what to expect from Deshaun Watson if he ever comes back. So certainly this quarterback room should be different. I think the question I have to ask you here, Dan, is not necessarily, hey, what Browns quarterback should we be going after? It's how do we handle guys like Harold Fannin, Quinshon Judkins, Jerry Jeudy to a certain point. Players like this, where those guys are going to matter more for single quarterback leagues in the FFPC than the actual quarterback themselves. I'm just kind of curious how you would handle Brown's skill position players, knowing this potential upheaval for the signal caller on this team.
I think for me, Harold Fannin is probably the safest player to draft out of that whole situation. Because we know, even from, anecdotally speaking, just from Baltimore the last couple of years, they were able to get the ball into Mark Andrews' hands. They were able to get the ball to Isaiah Likely. Like, I'm fine with them, and David Njoku's hitting free agency. So it's going to be Harold Fannin show. They could still obviously add to that position, but I'm perfectly fine. I think, if I'm comfortable with him inside even at tight end 5, I think that's probably fair. That's probably where he could end up finishing. It doesn't take much to be a top 5 tight end, especially when you have quarterbacks like, let's say Shedeur wins the job. Well, we know 1, he trusts Fannin, and 2, he's not very good. So he's going to throw the ball to the tight end quick just so he's not getting hit, which, by the way, 4 of their 5 offensive linemen are hitting free agency this year. Mm-hmm. That brings me to Quinshon Judkins. I love the talent. I love the player. That injury is terrifying to me. I think we've seen over the years guys struggle to come back from dislocated ankles, and Tony Pollard is the big one that always comes to my mind, where, he dislocates his ankle late in the season with Dallas, comes back, he plays the next year, but he just never looks right. And then they let him go in free agency. He gets to Tennessee and he's back to rushing for 1,000 yards again. So I think, anytime there's a dislocation, you have to be concerned about fractures. You have to be concerned about ligament damage, because all of these things are connected, and that's what holds it all together. So for me, Quinshon Judkins, even like a Cam Scatabo, like for me, I'm probably not touching either of them next year. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Like, so be it. But those are pretty detrimental multi-tier injuries that maybe won't hurt the long-term outlook of the player. But definitely for a year, I think I'm fine sitting out, especially because I think, like any second-year player, we're going to see their ADP tick up. There's going to be positive reports. They're going to be on the field for OTAs, stuff like that. And then Jerry Jeudy, he's just one of those players who I think if you draft Jerry Jeudy, you're just asking to lose.
Yeah, it's not fun.
It's empty. It's empty calories. Like, it's. So I don't see a world where I ever draft Jerry Jeudy. I think they're a team who could definitely add a wide receiver. This class has some depth. They have some picks. They could even be, Cedric Tillman, he's talented, but he can't get out of the concussions. So, maybe they're a team with late first round or early second Denzel Boston or Elijah Surratt. Like, these guys who they could put on the field who give them a bigger body so that Jerry Jeudy could run wind sprints underneath and, eat a bunch of targets.
Does Isaiah Bond factor into this at all, or is he just kind of a jag at this point?
He's a guy who takes the top off. I think he has a role, and I think he could hit big plays. I don't know that he necessarily meshes well with what Shedeur can do or what Dylan Gabriel can do. And we don't even know what Deshaun Watson can do anymore. So it's tough because he's a guy who, like, in the terms of like NFL football, like in terms of like a really, really like just the game, like he has a very distinct and defined role that's very useful. But for us in fantasy, you're never going to start him. And when you don't, he's going to score. And when you do, he won't.
I think the best, outside of Fannin, you make a good point about Judkins and his injury. Maybe I got to rethink that a little bit, because I thought it'd be good to buy him, because I think people would be concerned about it. And now I think they're rightfully concerned about it after I talk with you, Dan. Running back 22 at the 5'10 right now for Judkins. He's actually ironically going right after Cam Scatabo. But the 2 players that are going right after Judkins that I think are really interesting, Javonte Williams, who's a free agent, obviously, and then DeAndre Swift, who you could tell me, you're the Bears expert. He's under contract, but there's potential that they could let him go.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where if they need to try and free up some cap space, he's got a very cuttable contract. But he's also a guy where, he was productive this year. He was a good player for the Bears. it's not really a great running back draft class. It's a better free agent class than it is a draft class. So, if you think if you're the Chicago Bears and you're looking at it and it's like, okay, we could get a Breece Hall or a Kenneth Walker, like a clear upgrade, that's fine. But for the money Swift is making, he was very useful. He was a very good player. He played his role. So I don't necessarily know. He's cuttable, but he's also one of those numbers that you could keep if you want to pull levers in other places.
Let me ask you this. Is it too presumptive for us who are drafting right now? Is it too presumptive to assume that the backfield for the Bears next year is going to be Swift and Monangai again? Is that too presumptive to say?
The problem we have with the Bears, that they're kind of in this like influx. They were good this year. That was awesome. They still have some contracts on the books. Like they gave out some not great contracts last year to like Grady Jarrett. They can't get out of that one really, but they could add a void year and kind of spread the money out a little bit. Dio Odengbo, so they have like these big contracts. They're probably going to have to cut Edmonds, the linebacker. They have to replace. So like the problem with the Bears is they have pieces that they have to replace. Both safeties are not under contract next year. Now they have to figure out left tackle because Ozzie Trapillo blew out his patellar tendon. Both guys who are on the depth chart behind him are free agents. So like they have holes to fill, but they also have bad contracts. So like it's kind of like in this gray area where cutting DeAndre Swift makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, he's proven to be a good, strong, productive player. Do you want to release him not knowing what you're going to get on the back end?
The last team that the Bears played this season was the Los Angeles Rams. And I think maybe I'm overrating this. I think this is one of the most under talked about situations we have in fantasy football right now. And that's with whether Matthew Stafford decides to come back or not. Pro Football Talk reported on Tuesday this week that Stafford said he's going to take some time to decide whether he's going to come back to the Rams in 2026. He's 37 years old. However, he is coming off a career year, best season he's ever had. Probably going to win MVP, I would imagine. If not, he'll be runner-up. He's a top 2 guy. 46 touchdowns and 8 picks, which is crazy. His adjusted yards per attempt, 8.82, best of his career, which has spanned 17 years. It doesn't seem like he's been in the league that long, but he's been in the league 17 years. The quote from Stafford, it'll be a lot that goes into it. It's a physical, a mental, an emotional decision, a personal, and a family decision as well. So we'll figure all that kind of stuff out with some time. I know I had a ton of fun playing football this season and had so much fun playing for the Rams. So when I'm ready to figure that out, I'll be ready to figure that out. That moment is not right now. Stafford is signed through this upcoming season. $48 million cap hit for the Rams. Here's why it's so crucial. Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Blake Corum, Devontae Adams, Colby Parkinson, Terrence Ferguson to a certain extent. Who's the backup there right now? Stetson Bennett? I mean, there is no ready replacement for the Rams. They'd have to go out and sign a free agent quarterback. Maybe that'd be Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if Stafford decides to hang it up, but I can tell you this. If Stafford decides to retire, we're left in the lurch on, like, what do you do with Nacua? What do you do with Adams? That running game is all of a sudden very different. The Rams might operate in the draft a little bit differently with those 2 first-round picks, knowing that they're still in a championship window. They just need a quarterback. So I don't know, man. Like, I look at this. I think he's going to come back, and the Rams will try to run it back with how close they got this year. But that's not a given. And I think we need to keep that in the backs of our minds when we're drafting Rams right now, Dan. We need to understand, like, Stafford coming back is not a lock that it's going to happen this year.
As a fellow 37-year-old who thought they tore their hamstring off the bone chasing a 10-month-old infant today, I understand why it's going to take time to decide whether it's still, and you're 100% right. It's so much of this operation is contingent on Matthew Stafford being the quarterback. So, and then you look at okay, right now they have Jimmy Garoppolo as their backup, right? But he's a free agent.
Yeah.
They have all these, like you were saying, these different players who are already making money or players that they have to pay. They just extend it. They're going to have to extend Puka. They just extended Kyron last offseason. So how much can they invest in free agency on a guy? So do they become the team who takes Ty Simpson in the first round at pick 12 or 13, whatever they have from Atlanta? Are they a surprise Carson Beck team in the second round? Right? I mean, big arm guy who can distribute the ball. We just saw him do it with Miami. He's going to make some terrible decisions, like trying to throw to a 2-hole with nothing in the flat to keep a guy there, but that's okay. That only lost you a national championship, right? So it's so much of Stafford. I think in my heart, he ultimately comes back. I think that they can convince him that they are in their window. And if you can give us one more year, then we can win this. But he had back problems this summer. That's why we were able to get Puka in the later first at the end of the summer. It's why Devontae Adams' ADP never got too high. It wasn't too long ago that he was in some random on-site trailer that is apparently, rejuvenated his entire body, but it's hard. 37 years old is not designed for football.
He needs to have whatever was in that mobile chamber. He needs to have like a bubble around him with whatever that was doing just at all times.
I'll take it too.
That I would too. Absolutely. This is why fantasy football is so crazy. As we were, and I don't want to say we, because Dan, I don't know how you were on this, but so many people were ready to write off Stafford. I mean, I saw people posting photos of this mobile hyperbaric chamber. Like this is Stafford's like Dracula casket. This is how he comes back to life all the time. And now we're like, oh, please, Stafford, come back for our Nakua and our Devontae shares and everything like this over the course of less than a year. It's so wild how it's come to that. But this is what we're living in. The Rams pick 13th and 29th in the draft. Simpson, you might be able to get him at 29. I know how quarterbacks usually ascend and they increase in value as we lead up to the draft. So they might have to take utilize that 13th pick on Simpson. But you get a guy like Sean McVay with that offense. I don't know. I think that Simpson pick could pay off. And then when Stafford if he does come back for 2026 or maybe even 2027, all of a sudden you got Simpson, playing the role of Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, where he had 2 years, with the clipboard. This dude did not have a lot of starts at Alabama, which I know there's a lot of draftniks out there that will tell you one of the best indicators of future NFL success is career starts in college. Carson Beck had a ton of those. Maybe he'd be ready to go in 2027. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with Matthew Stafford. Matthew, please, because I know he watches this show every week, make your decision sooner rather than later for the sake of fantasy footballers everywhere. That is going to wrap up around the NFL. We're going to come back with the coaching carousel. We're going to talk about Mike McCarthy. We're going to talk about Brian Daboll, Mike McDaniel with Los Angeles. That's going to be a lot of fun to talk about as well. We've been talking about the never too early best ball tournaments with the FFPC. Go to myffpc.com to join those today. Take your shot at 2 separate 5-figure grand prizes. You can also join the Big Gorilla and the Baby Gorilla. $1 million grand prize and $100,000 grand prize, respectively, on that. And, of course, Dynasty and Empire Orphans available. MyFFPC.com. For as low as $1, play fantasy football year-round. He's Dan Fornek. He is with RotoBaller, with FTN, and, of course, with Roto Underworld. I'm Eric Balkman. FFPC Insider Access rolls on with the coaching carousel right after this. I think a rising tide, in this case, Mike McDaniel, raises all ships. But is it maybe going to raise one of those ships a little higher than the others? Is there anybody with Los Angeles that you're specifically excited about with Mike McDaniel calling the shots?
See, this one is tough because, like you said, it's the rising tide lifts all boats. I think the hire is going to help the whole offense. It's hard to nail down which player. But in thinking about how the market's going to react to this, I like Omarion Hampton. He's probably going to go, though, really high, early second round. So you got to be willing to take that risk. I know McDaniel's great at, creating a running game, but we haven't seen it yet. What if he gives Kamani Vidal a little bit of touches? But in short, I still will be fine with Omarion Hampton at that price, just because he's a talented running back with a great coach. But we still have to point out some risks that are involved. Looking at the receivers, probably, I don't know, Keenan Allen, do we really think he's going to be back? He's looking like he's on his last legs. I think if Keenan Allen maybe gets cut or is not brought back, and with the fact that Ladd McConkey had such a disappointing year, left a sour taste in everyone's mouth, kind of Keenan Allen's skill set made it at first we're like, oh, Keenan Allen's not going to affect Ladd McConkey, but he did, clearly, because he just was another, underneath target that Herbert looked at. If Allen is gone with McDaniel there, that's two positives in Ladd McConkey's favor. Add in the fact that maybe he won't get bumped up too much because he had such a disappointing year, whereas Hampton's going to get, steamed quite a bit. Maybe McConkey's the one that I'm going to go with just because of price.
I'm actually surprised as I looked at the ADP. Hampton's not going until the mid-second, which, I mean, I don't know. I guess I kind of thought he'd be more of like a 1-2 turn type guy, but he's mid-second, right by Jeremiah Love, right behind James Cook. I don't think Allen's coming back. At least that's what my gut's telling me right now. The guy I think that, not that I'm most excited for, but the guy I think that could make the biggest step forward on this Chargers offense is actually Harris. Because he was kind of kept off the field after that Keenan Allen signing. And it took him a while to kind of acclimate. He came on to, I don't say at the end of the year, but sort of like the third quarter of the year, you saw him come on a little bit more. And McConkey, let's face it, McConkey doesn't have as far to jump as Harris does. Same thing with Hampton. So Harris is the guy, and not that I'd be targeting him as like a wide receiver 3 or anything like that, but I think he's an exciting guy to watch out for next year as well. FFPC Insider Access rolls on here on the Better Sports Network live on Thursday, January 29th, 2026. Eric Balkman here, along with my good buddy Dan Fornek from Player Profiler for the numbers, and of course, RotoBaller. Check him out on the X at FornekDF. So glad to have you aboard tonight as we're talking FFPC Dynasty, FFPC Empire Dynasty Orphans available, myffpc.com. They're doing a ton of talk about the Never Too Early Best Ball and the Never Too Early Superflex Best Ball Tournament ADP. And of course, if you're looking for drafting for $1 million right now, the FFPC Big Gorilla as well as the Baby Gorilla for $100,000 grand prize available now, myffpc.com. So let's get into this. Really peculiar stuff going on since the Bills lost to the Denver Broncos in the divisional playoff, Dan. Brandon Beane, not Joe Shane. I get those guys mixed up all the time. Brandon Beane, probably because they're both underwhelming GMs. Brandon Beane in his sort of end of season press conference was interrupted by Terry Pegula a couple of times with the Keon Coleman thing. Pegula saying that he made the move to fire Sean McDermott after what he saw in the Denver game. He wants to be able to get over the playoff hump. And what do you do to get over that playoff hump? You promote the guy who helped you not be able to get over that playoff hump. The Joe Brady offensive coordinator experience has turned into the Joe Brady head coaching experience in Buffalo. While I think this is somewhat of an underwhelming hire for Buffalo, I do know for fantasy, for Josh Allen, for James Cook, it's probably good news, right? You know that Brady is going to continue to feed James Cook. He's already said he's going to retain play calling duties. So you know that the offense should remain same as it ever was. You know that Josh Allen is going to be a supernova again this year in regards to fantasy football. I think he is in the Never Too Early Best Ball. I think he's the first quarterback off the board. I'm going to want to verify that. Yeah, quarterback 1 at the mid third. But receivers, I think Dalton Kincaid is the only guy that we got to try to figure out here because we know what Shakir's going to do. I really don't see, and I know you wrote about this. I want to say, was it for Player Profiler or for RotoBaller about the team needs, the AFC team needs?
That was FTN.
FTN. It was for FTN. And you talked about, look, they need a receiver, but I don't know what receiver they're going to get unless they draft one in the first round again. Maybe Mekhi Lemon or somebody like that, Jordan Tyson, when they pick. Unless they soak another first round pick into wide receiver, I don't know what they're going to do. And so to me, the Brady thing is good news for Allen and Cook. I don't know what it means for Dalton Kincaid yet. And then we heard last week, and I'll let you weigh in on this, Kincaid played the whole season on a torn PCL, according to Dawson Knox, which makes me like Kincaid a little bit more as well. Your thoughts when you found out that Brady was going to be the new head coach for Buffalo?
I mean, from analyst, like fantasy side of things, it's nice because, okay, we know what this offense is. Maybe it looks a little bit different. Who knows? Sean McDermott, a defensive head coach, is going to preach ball security, and they're going to preach shortening the game, running it out. So maybe they get a little bit more pass happy. I tend to think that Joe Brady's been calling his offense this whole time. I probably, like you said, it's going to be difficult for them to get a wide receiver. They're going to be drafting later in the first. Those top tier guys, Lemon, Tyson, Carnell Tate, they're probably all going to be off the board by the time they're picking, you would imagine. So, it's hard to then fathom trading up. Are they a team who could make a move for a Brandon Ayuk? Are they the team who could go for AJ Brown? There's a lot of rumors with Chicago and DJ Moore. There are a lot of names that are going to be out there. Could they be a team that pays some money to Rashid Shaheed, who has shown in flashes, and, in Seattle, it hasn't looked maybe the way we all thought, but there were times with the Saints, he's one of, if not the fastest wide receiver in the NFL right now, just on the field. I know that, Xavier Worthy ran the 4.21 a couple of years ago at the combine, but when I watch Rashid Shaheed, he moves differently than a lot of people. And that's something that their offense they were relying on Brandon Cooks for that in the playoffs. So for me personally, and I've been doing just some early, best ball stuff for me. I do underdog sometimes. Keon Coleman is going so late that I'm taking the swing. I mean, we're talking about, I think on underdog, which I did a draft on there the other day, he was 19th, 20th round. Like, I'm taking him with the last round pick. Absolutely. 100%. Second round pick 2 years ago. Joe Brady, I think he came out today and said, like, I was one of the ones standing on the table for this kid. I called him and said, this is the best thing that could have happened for you. I'm going to so the guy who wanted him is still there. And yeah, okay, the owner made the comments that he made. The owner doesn't call plays. The owner was a part of the decision process that gave Joe Brady the head coaching job. So if Joe Brady has confidence that he could still extract whatever he needs to out of Keon Coleman, then for a last round pick, yeah, okay. Like, sure, we'll make worse ones, right? We'll draft guys in, the 12th, 13th round who take zero. We're willing to take Travis Hunter in 12 and 13, and he's a cornerback. Like, yeah, I'll take Keon Coleman in the last round and see what happens. Sure.
I think that, in Keon Coleman, wide receiver 81 at the 18-10 right now. If you build your never too early best ball tournaments teams heavy on running backs, and then you sort of have like this approach where you're just going to load up on what wide receivers or whatever, he's a fantastic pick in the 18th round just to see what happens. That dude could end up being a top 30 wide receiver this year. We don't know. He probably won't be, but we don't know. One of the things that I think that, playing fantasy football as long as I have now, which I think, God, it's probably been 30 years or so that I've been playing. The one thing I know is that we just don't know. There's just so much crazy stuff that happens year to year that you just can't predict. It's weird, wild stuff. Todd Monken, as we mentioned, is going to move from the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator position to the Cleveland Browns head coach position. Diana Rossini from The Athletic reported that earlier this week. Monken is a guy that has coordinated some pretty good offenses in Baltimore, coordinated some pretty good offenses for the University of Georgia in college football when Georgia was winning national titles as well. Good mind. He's an older guy, and I think people kind of penalize him for that. Like, well, if this guy's all that good, why did it take this long for him to finally get a head coaching gig? And there might be something to that. But I don't know, man. Like I just feel like Monken is a smart enough guy to know that when you have I'm trying to think of a good analysis for this. When you have bologna, leftover bacon, and filet in your refrigerator, he knows you're going to baby that filet and make that filet as good as possible because that's all anybody's going to remember from the meal. He's going to ignore the bologna and the leftover bacon or whatever. And that filet is Harold Fannin. It could be Quinshon Judkins, who we talked about with the injury, probably kind of gumming up the works a little bit there. But I don't know. I'm choosing to look at this from a positive way. I think Monken's smart enough to make sure he is designing plays to get his best players the football. I think this is good news for a guy like Harold Fannin.
No, absolutely. And, when he's at Georgia, I'm pretty sure that's when he overlapped with Bowers, right? He had Bowers for some of the time. When he's with Baltimore, Mark Andrews had good seasons, Isaiah Likely, and really the reason for optimism with Fannin is he's capable of being one of those guys where he's going to be a tight end, and now he's a wing, and now he's the slot, and we can put him out wide. So he's your movable chess piece. And again, when you don't have quality quarterbacks, more often than not, you're just trying to get them to get the ball out of their hands fast. And Fannin is going to be the one who's receiving those targets more often than not. He's going to be underneath. He's going to run the stick routes. He's going to get to that, if there's a blitz, he's going to be the one probably going into that vacated area. So, yeah, I think I feel really confident in Fannin. I am curious to see what else they do, and Judkins, if the reports are coming back well, I just with that caliber of injury combined with an offensive line that's going to have a lot of turnover, because how many of those guys are even worth retaining? Most of them are on their third contract at this point. They're old anyway. So what does that look like? And how are they able to salvage that? I just have general concerns about the team, like the offense, but for a team that, was looking for an offensive mind to try and develop a young quarterback, be it Shador or Gabriel, or ideally whoever they take in 2026 or 2027. Yeah, sure. Okay. Why not? He was a good coordinator with Baltimore.
Right. And I'm just noticing this too, as you were talking. I looked Todd Monken's career up. Maybe this is too presumptive to connect these dots. He was a wide receivers coach for the Buccaneers for 2 years. He was also a wide receiver coach for LSU for 2 years. Oklahoma State, he was a wide receivers coach for 3 years. Louisiana Tech, wide receivers coach for a year. Eastern Michigan, coached wide receivers for 7 years. This guy has worked with wide receivers over the majority of his career. There's maybe not any wide receivers that stand out in Cleveland at the moment. We talked about Bond, Tillman, Judy. But what happens if Cleveland drafts one? What happens if they trade for one or sign for one? That's a guy I want to be in business with for 2026, given the dearth of options in Cleveland and knowing how much experience Monken has had working with wide receivers. I think that's one to think about as well going forward.
Well, and it's you can trust his ability to evaluate what he's looking for. If he's drafting a guy, he has an eye for wide receivers. He's coached the position for over a decade at all levels, college, NFL, right? So if he's picking a guy, it's like, okay, like he saw something in this guy that he thinks he could utilize.
We want to talk, pivot the conversation to, and I don't know how you feel about this. Brian Daboll is the new offensive coordinator in Nashville for the Tennessee Titans under Bob Saleh, who is the new head coach there. And Saleh came out at a press conference today and talked about how he wanted to really have his players playing with a chip on their shoulders, maybe talking some smack, but really, being physical and violent, and which I think that's the culture you want to establish in Tennessee if you're solid. Daboll is now the offensive coordinator there. And I think this is good for Cam Ward because, you think about what Daboll did for Jackson Dart, think about some of the stuff he did in college, working with some of those young quarterbacks there. He wasn't great as a head coach, but that doesn't mean he's a bad offensive coordinator. In fact, his offenses that he's coordinated at both the collegiate and the professional level been pretty good. I think this is good for Cam Ward. We'll see what Tennessee does because I think in order for Ward to be successful, he's going to need more than Daboll. He's going to have another threat wide receiver. I'm assuming Calvin Ridley is done in Tennessee, and Alec Iamaner and Shamir Dike just does not strike fear into defensive coordinators' hearts. Chigo Okonkwo is fine, but I don't think he's necessarily a difference maker. You need playmakers for Tennessee. But I think the Titans have made a step in the right direction. The one concern I'd have, two concerns, I guess. One, if they just miss on everybody, if they can't get any playmakers in. And then two, if that happens, what if Saleh just wants to run the hell out of the ball with Pollard and Spears and just play strong defense and just basically be in every game in the fourth quarter? And maybe you only win 5 or 6 of them, but you're in every game. That kind of neuters Cam Ward, and it neuters the fantasy value for a lot of the playmakers in Tennessee that are either there or soon to be there. The Daboll hiring was good. Still a lot to be done in Tennessee, though, Dan, before I get excited about this offense.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine that they have so many young, and their entire receiving core last year ended up being day 3 picks, right? I mean, Iomanor was a 4th rounder. I think DK was a 4th rounder. Gunnar Helm was a day 3 pick. He's the tight end. Chiga Konko is a free agent. Like, so you would have to imagine that whatever money they have, some of it's going to have to go. Like, what about an Alec Pierce? Like a guy who is ascending, he can stretch the field, but I think this year he kind of showed with the Colts that like he could do more than that. He was running, more routes over the middle. I think Romeo Dobbs would be an interesting guy there. He kind of crosses over a little bit with Ioman, but like I think you could get by if you had DK as your field stretcher, Iomanor playing in the slot, and then Dobbs is kind of functioning as your X receiver, your kind of bigger body guy who that Ward can find and just believe in like that. It's probably not fantastic for fantasy, but like it'll make you feel good about the direction of the team. You have to imagine they probably want to go defense with their 2nd overall pick. I think that's what they have, 2nd or 3rd. There's not really a wide receiver of that caliber in this class, and they're pretty set along the offensive line. But, if they're a team who could trade back a little bit, wide receivers in play there, I would like a Carnell Tate probably, or a Jordan Tyson, like more so than Mekhi Lemon, who I think Lemon is probably the more talented one, but he doesn't really profile as like your guy. Like you put him outside and he's going to win. So, yeah, I like Daboll. Like you said, he orchestrates good offenses. He was one of the big architects for the whole Josh Allen, development pipeline. He was good at Alabama when he was there. But this offense just needs playmaking talent. And right now, I just don't know how they're going to prioritize everything.
I'm seeing they have the 4th overall pick in the first round. I'm seeing a lot of Ruben Bain, the edge rusher from Miami. I'm seeing some Arvell Reese from Ohio State, obviously another edge player. I think Reese is probably gone at that point. But I'm also seeing like a couple of mock drafts. I don't think they take Jordan Tyson with the 4th overall pick, but some people are seeing it that way. And obviously if Tyson goes to Tennessee, I'm very excited for Tennessee. I'm very excited for Cam Ward if that happens. I always go back to this. I attribute it to Ben Gretsch. I think it was Ben Gretsch who said this. I could be wrong on it. But he talked about, because obviously a lot of the concerns with Tyson are injuries and all the injuries, the cavalcade of injuries he's had in college. And Gretsch said about McCaffrey last year, and he was right. He said, you need to stop asking yourself, what happens if McCaffrey gets hurt? Like if you take him in the first round, what happens if he gets hurt? You have to start asking yourself, what happens if this guy doesn't get hurt? And I think that's the way I look at Jordan Tyson, especially from a dynasty standpoint. Adrian Peterson, if you go back, that dude was like made of glass in college. He was constantly hurt for Oklahoma. Then he becomes an Iron Man in the pros. What's to say that Jordan Tyson doesn't all of a sudden just stay healthy? That he he doesn't have all this other stuff going on that college players have. And he has this really good medical team, nutrition team, strength and conditioning team that is keeping him healthy. What happens if he stays healthy? And he's Cam Ward's target, number 1 target. I'd be totally on board for that. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but it's still fun to think about.
Hey, it's fun to dream. Let's dream.
It's fun to dream, baby. And I know the Titans fans are dreaming about Jordan Tyson. That'd be great. Mike McDaniel, we heard Frank Emirante from your colleague at RotoBaller and obviously Fantasy Pros talking about Mike McDaniel's impact on the Los Angeles Chargers at the break. I want to get your thoughts on that. McDaniel said at his introductory press conference that Justin Herbert, quote, hasn't neared the ceiling of what he's capable of. But in that same press conference, he also said he wants to take some stuff off of Herbert's plate. The possibilities are endless. There's a lot of playmakers for Los Angeles: Herbert, Hampton, McConkey, Gadsden. Think about guys like Quentin Johnston, Trey Harris, I think would figure into this as well. I am of the belief that McDaniel is just going to make everybody better, but perhaps, and I said this too in that clip we just saw, perhaps there's one player or maybe 2 players that it helps maybe a little bit more than some of the others. When you found out McDaniel was going to be the OC, were there any players that you immediately were like, yep, I got to zero in on that guy in drafts?
I really like Gadsden. I think that he showed, especially this past year with like Darren Waller, like that tight end, that guy that he can leverage into situations, especially in the red zone. but who can be an athletic mismatch up the middle of the field. I think that's going to have that has a lot of value. I believe in Ladd McConkey. I think this year was a weird year. I think that Keenan Allen kind of absorbed more of the role than they expected him to. But like when you think of the players that McDaniel has had some success with in Miami, it's Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. They're these smaller guys who can run these deep crossers. They could get over the top. And I think Ladd McConkey showed he could do that as a rookie. I don't know what happened this year. I don't know. It's hard to say, things went awry. The offensive line falls apart. You lose your left tackle before the season even starts. You have to adjust on the fly. A player like Keenan Allen gets real appealing, somebody who just wins immediately so that Herbert's not getting crushed. And by the way, he still got crushed, right?
Right.
But at least, so I think it's McConkey. I obviously Omarion Hampton is a fantastic talent. There's some numbers. I think I put out a tweet. He was so inefficient as an inside zone runner this year, like one of the worst EPA runners and success rates among all running backs in the NFL. I think like his expected points added, he was at like negative 9.7 on inside zone plays. And so what I'm curious is, before I go all in on him, and you can absolutely do it based on the talent, what direction do they take their interior offensive line? You know what I'm like? Harbaugh is a power, straight downhill kind of guy. McDaniel is from the Shanahan tree of the wide zone. We want quicker offensive linemen. Those two philosophies do not gel in the trenches. So I'm going to be cautious, and I'm going to see how they fix that interior offensive line before I start pushing the button on Omarion Hampton in like round 2. I'm going to kind of give it time to breathe a little bit. And then I think Trey Harris, he showed flashes this year. His skill set, you would think, especially based on like his yards per route run during his last year at Ole Miss, like he is this explosive deep play receiver. You would like to think that McDaniel could get the most out of that. It's just, how does it overlap with Quentin Johnston, right? So, but you drafted Harris early last year and he got a redshirt year. Yeah, I think you could cut him loose.
I'm going to say this too. I think the time to draft Hampton is when they sign or trade for or draft the 2026 version of Najee Harris, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because right now he is being drafted as if he is the guy in that backfield, and maybe he will be. He probably is the 1A at a minimum. But I think once they add a guy that's not Kamani Vidal or whoever in that backfield, once they add the actual difference maker that McDaniel is going to use, then that's the time to buy Hampton, when he slips to the mid-third or maybe the late third even, right? And that hasn't happened yet. So I don't know if the value is there on Hampton. I think it will be. It'll get there eventually, but not right now. All right, one last thing I want to bring up with the coaching carousel. Kevin Stefanski, obviously the new head coach in Atlanta. Offensive coordinator Tommy Rees is going to be calling plays for the Falcons in 2026. This was the same situation that Stefanski ended last season with. Stefanski, when he was a coach of Cleveland, started off the season calling plays. He ceded that to Tommy Rees, and that's going to be the situation that they start from in Atlanta this year. We don't know what's going on with Kyle Pitts. We don't know exactly how Rees is going to call these games now that he has a completely different offense in Atlanta than he did with Cleveland. My guess is this. Bijan Robinson is going to get all he can handle. He is an excellent 101 pick for anybody drafting right now. Theo Greminger, I know from Fantasy Points, says he thinks he's going to go 1,000 this year. I would not be surprised if that happened. I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked. And then you have Drake London, too, on this offense. Now, let me throw this at you, too, and I know we're kind of – maybe this is wish casting on my part. David Njoku's a free agent. Stefanski coached him. If Pitts moves on to, like, I know people are talking about Kansas City, something like that. If Pitts moves on and the Falcons sign Njoku, I'd be loving Njoku with be reunited with Stefanski. I'll let you weigh in on that. And then also what you think about the guys, the head coach and the OC for Cleveland last year, their impact on these players in Atlanta this year, now that they are also the head coach and OC there.
Whoever ends up being their tight end, we know that the Stefanski coaching tree loves to target tight ends, right? I mean, that's what they do. That's the primary read most times. But I think Drake London is still fine because there's not like who's going to take targets from him. Darnell Mooney, that's not going to happen, right? We've seen it not happen. Bijan Robinson, fantastic. Theo is one of the smartest fantasy people I know. If he feels like Bijan could go 1,000, I'm in. Like, okay, yeah. If Theo said it, okay, sure. Like, I'm not going to sit here and fight it too hard. It's hard because there were really, really good times at points for Stefanski in Cleveland, right? The talent kind of fell off. The offensive line got old. The quarterback situation, he kind of feels like the more time passes, it feels like, he was not the one who wanted Deshaun Watson. That felt like the front office or the GM telling him, hey, we made this trade, make it work. And then it just never worked. Mm-hmm. The problem is, well, I mean, as I'm sitting here and thinking about it, how many years did we wish cast Kirk Cousins with Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland? Because it's the perfect, like we did it for so long. And I'm not saying I think that they're going to have to try and make it work with Penix. I think when you invest a top 10 pick in a quarterback, you're kind of hamstrung. Ask the Minnesota Vikings, right? You have to, and that was 12. But I think Stefanski his offense is meant to try and take as much of a load off the quarterback as possible. So whether it's Penix or whether it's Cousins, if they can just be a point guard and run off the play action and get the ball on deep shots to Drake London and whatever tight end is there. Like Albion, the NFC South is terrible. Like they can win that division next year, especially because they kept Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator there. They're probably the most talented roster in the NFC South. I mean, if you look at it top to bottom. Okay, like, I'll take Bijan 101. I'll take Drake London in the first or second round, wherever he is. And whichever tight end lands there, it'll be, probably a guy who, if he doesn't skyrocket into like some crazy like tight end 5 price, yeah, I'm in. Like, David Njoku was going as like tight end 12, I think, by the end of last summer. I would do that again. Why not?
We have some breaking news that's coming through right now, and this affects your Bears. And maybe you were expecting this. But according to Adam Schefter, the Falcons, who we were just talking about, are hiring Bears assistant GM Ian Cunningham as their new GM. I don't know how much fantasy knowledge we can glean from this, but maybe you can weigh in on what you think the impact is on Cunningham, who was working under Ryan Poles, right, in Chicago, and now he is going to be the head man in Atlanta.
I mean, from a Bears perspective, the biggest thing is they get, I believe, 2 comp picks for him getting hired. And those will be third round. So like, that's okay. Great. That's premium awesome. Draft. Yeah. More premium draft capital. From everything, like just gathering, news sources and the bubble you curate on social media. Cunningham is like one of those very highly respected minds. I can't sit here and say it's surprising because there's connections with him and Matt Ryan and Ryan Poles. Poles and Matt Ryan were teammates. So there was always like this belief that once Matt Ryan was the president of football ops, the only thing that, there was concern about initially was if the Bears would get comp picks for it, because technically the way it's organized, Matt Ryan was explained as like the decision maker. So I'm not sure if this is, so like if the Bears are allowing Cunningham to go to Atlanta, I'm assuming that they found out that they'll get the comp picks for him. If not, it's kind of an interesting choice on their part because he is pretty highly respected around the league. So who knows? I mean, good for him. It's exciting. There's only 32 general manager jobs, and you hold it, and you're just hoping you did not get fired and to do a good job.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And we'll see. I mean, like, I think that Atlanta franchise is moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And how refreshing is it that the Bears are getting people in their front office poached by other teams? It's been a while since we've seen that.
We have coaches getting interviewed to be coordinators places. This is an offensive. Who knew? That's a thing that happens.
What was the God, I'm gonna screw this up right now. I think I said this on the show last week, if I remember correctly. Oh yeah, it was the Bears, right? The Kansas City Chiefs Dynasty kind of ongoing, maybe over with, whatever. They're stealing Eric Bieniemy from the Chicago Bears. The Chiefs are stealing coaches from the Bears. The Bears haven't even enjoyed a Super Bowl championship yet, and they're getting all these guys, front office, coaches poached. The Bears, the new center for professional football in the Midwest. I don't know. Maybe
some would say that they're the spine of everything. It's the hub. Yeah. We are finally at the center of the football world. It's amazing what happens when you win more than 6 games. Let's do it.
Right. We have Bears to talk about too. I want to get into Colson Loveland. We might touch on Luther Burden, but definitely I want to get into as many targets and fades in the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament. There's so many people I want to ask you about. I want to go back to the rookie wide receiver. I want to talk about Devon Achane, Christian McCaffrey. Let's get into Sam Laporta as well, because I have some thoughts on that. And of course, Caleb Williams will be coming up as well. He's Dan Fornek from RotoBaller, Roto Underworld, and of course, FTN. I'm Eric Balkman. This is FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. Don't go anywhere. We roll on right after this. Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon declaring for the NFL draft. If only he would have stayed one more year with Dante Moore throwing the football to him, maybe he would have been even drafted higher. But as it stands, this dude is probably going to be a first-round pick. Certainly the best tight end in this draft, if not the best, one of the best. He's only 20 years old. He was 2 years ago as a sophomore, 24 catches, 300-plus yards, 2 touchdowns on the champions of the Big Ten. That was Oregon 2 years ago. Last year, he tops 50 catches, 500 yards, 8 touchdowns, and that was tops among all tight ends in college this past year. I think that, especially with tight end premium scoring with the FFPC, when it comes to rookie drafts, and we'll see where this guy ends up, and obviously opportunity situation is going to affect his status in rookie drafts. But before that, when we have these redraft leagues, Pat, Kenyon Sadiq is a very, very interesting guy. If you wait on tight end to grab him as your second tight end this year, I'm not saying he's Harold Fannin Jr. because he's not, but he could have a similar, if not as impactful impact on your fantasy squads this season. Dude catches a lot of passes. He's very athletic, and certainly in the right situation, he could flourish, and you won't have to draft him. At least I don't think you'll have to draft him as one of the top 12 tight ends.
Absolute freak athlete. People are going to be really excited about him after the combine, because he is going to go in and he's going to run a 4.5 or maybe a sub 4.5 if he does some speed training. I think he already has a 41.5-inch vertical jump on the books. Good hands, good body control. And as you said, I mean, he doesn't turn 21 until March. I can't remember if it's before or after the draft or he turns 21, but there's a lot to like here. Plus he's 245 pounds with room to add weight and apparently very dedicated to improving as a blocker. So it looks like he's going to be a 3-down tight end.
Welcome back to FFPC Insider Access. It is the stretch run here on the Better Sports Network. We'll take you all the way to the top of the hour. I'm joined by Dan Fornek from Player Profiler, RotoBaller, and of course FTN at Fornek DF on the X is where to catch all of the content he's producing in case you missed any of it. By the way, in case you missed our earlier conversation, this will live on the Better Sports Network and FFPC socials, as well as anywhere you get podcast if you want to listen to the audio version as well. MyFFPC.com is your home for the Never Too Early Best Ball tournaments, the big and baby gorillas, and of course, Dynasty and Empire Orphan teams. Available for as little as $1. Manage those teams to greatness here in 2026. MyFFPC.com. Let's talk about the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament here, Dan. I want to kick things off with a running back conversation. Christian McCaffrey, maybe starting to show his age, his wear and tear. I have heard from a lot of pundits out there that would tell you that the age curve does not necessarily apply to McCaffrey the same way because of his pass catching prowess. In other words, this dude could just be a slot receiver. This guy could just line up and catch passes all the time because of how talented he is in that aspect of football. I am of the opinion that the Niners will not do that. The Niners are still going to utilize him out of the backfield. And to me, after what we saw this year, with all that usage and the fact that he didn't go down, I don't really see that happening 2 years in a row. I could be wrong, You never want to assume injury, but I have serious misgivings on utilizing a pick on Christian McCaffrey in the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament with the FFPC if I'm playing in it, because he is going as running back 3 at the 108. It's too much risk for me. How do you feel about it?
So let me preface with, I was all about Christian McCaffrey this year. This season, I was willing to take that.
In
swing.
2025, you were this past season, right? 2025
Yes. This past year, like, he was on, for anybody who's a Scott Fish follower, he was my first pick. Like, I was in the Scott Fish Bowl. I made it to the semifinals. Like, I rode Christian McCaffrey and Devon A-Chain all the way there because of pass catching. We did it, right? He set a career high in touches, and he's going to be 30. And I just can't, like, we started to see the rust show as a runner, and yeah, the receiving work is fantastic, but the injury history is also very real. And, we generally, a good rule of thumb with fantasy football is if a running back is 30, he's done, right? I mean, that's kind of where we've come. There aren't many 30-year-olds who survive that long at that position. So I'm probably not drafting very much of him this year. There's so many good running backs that I don't feel like I have to take Christian McCaffrey with the RB3, RB4 price tag.
The other thing I want to bring up here with high-end running backs, and I apologize, we're going to move fairly quickly through this because there's so much I want to get to. There was a quote from Jeff Hafley, and I'm trying to find it right now, I think it was his introductory press conference after he took over as head coach for the Dolphins. Oh, God, this is horrible radio. Oh, no, it's John Eric Sullivan. John Eric Sullivan, who's the new GM, who actually also came from the Packers. He says he wants to build a team in Miami that wins in cold weather. And he cited, like, look at our division. New England, Buffalo, New York. They're all upper Northeast teams that have snow, cold weather. You got to be able to win there. And I've heard this echoed by Packers brass several times. Fast gets slow, but big doesn't get small in cold weather. And to me, Mike McDaniel was a coach whose GM and whose team really predicated that squad on speed. Devon Achane, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, all these fast guys that really were kind of neutered a little bit when it came to cold weather games, that the speedy guys just couldn't get it done. Now, with John Eric Sullivan taking over, Jeff Hafley, who said he wants the team to be more physical, more tough, does this give you any misgivings about drafting a speed guy, an undersized guy in Devon Achane in the first round of the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament with the FFPC? He's going at the 110. McCaffrey's the running back 3. He's the running back 4. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I don't know, man. I just feel like there's a culture change. There's a philosophical change going on in Miami. And with what I heard from Sullivan and Hafley, I'm a little bit nervous about drafting Achane at the back end of the first round now.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fair to be nervous. Part of the problem too is you're going from Mike McDaniel, who, for all the struggles that the team had collectively, he's a offensive genius. He's able to understand how to get his players in positions to maximize their abilities, right? And so with Achane, what that's turned into the last couple of years is this big, massive receiving role, getting him out into space, utilizing him in the spree, but even using him downfield. Jeff Hafley's a defensive coach. They have a big back on the roster already in Ollie Gordon, and schematically, we're going to probably see them go for more of an outside zone team, which is what McDaniel, that's his bread and butter, to they're probably going to be more of a gap scheme run game. And that's not necessarily what Achane is good at. He's good in space. He's good making that one cut, going horizontal and getting upfield. So I do think we need to see a little bit more information about how that team's going to go before I'm sitting here and like slamming the button on Devon Achane RB4. Like, there just has to be more there. And that's one of those players where we could come back and have a conversation December next year, and I could be, man, I'm an idiot. Like, how could I doubt that guy? But
Right.
He's going into, I believe, the final year of his contract. He's eligible for an extension, I believe, after this season. So, if I think that's going to be telling, they're going to give us the breadcrumbs going into it. And if they're not in a hurry to do an extension for him, even though he's the best player on their team, and, maybe they invest a second round, third round pick in a running back. Maybe they're one of the teams who go after like a Brian Robinson or someone who's a bigger back, Tyler Algier, who can go forward. That's going to tell us a lot of information on, can we trust round one Devon Achane, when people were finding reasons not to trust him in the second round last year. They were just wrong to do it.
Another under talked about aspect of this, pair what Halfley and Sullivan are saying with a running back that's already on the roster, a 6'2", 225-pound second-year running back named Ollie Gordon. Maybe he ends up being the Montgomery to Achane, which I think is palatable for Achane. But if he's anything more than that, if it's like a 1A, 1B situation, I don't know, man. Like this could be really bad news for Achane this year. Kind of a landmine that nobody's talking about, because we've seen the talent, right? We know what he can do catching the ball, rushing the ball. He's a big play waiting to happen. He is one of those rare players in the NFL that can create explosive plays, even when his offense isn't all that great. So you love to see it. Just don't know what that new regime does for him in Miami. Okay. One of the players that is going almost right at, well, Jonathan Taylor's going right after Achane, but the guy after that is one Ashton Jeanty. Jeanty's stats last year look awesome. If you take the offensive line aspect out of it, like his yards after contact, sublime. Mm-hmm. Like this dude did so much on his own because he had nothing to work with Las Vegas. Now the Raiders, fast forward a year, they're going to be getting probably Fernando Mendoza. I don't know why I always want to call him Francisco. Fernando Mendoza as a massive upgrade at quarterback. And say what you will about how good Mendoza is going to be as a pro. He's going to be a lot better than Geno Smith and everybody else that the Raiders were trotting out last year. They have the opportunity to upgrade the offensive line, both in free agency and in the draft. That's going to help them out as well. I think Jeanty, and maybe FFPC owners are just being sharp when they see this. He should be a guy that 15 years ago, Dan, this guy would be falling to the fourth round after this year. Not so this year. Jeanty is running back 6 at the 203, and I'm still in on him right there. I love Ashton Jeanty this year. Should be a good bounce back for him this year. He's going to be a target for me. How is he for you right now in drafts?
All the way in. I'm there. The way I've when I get in arguments with people about Ashton Jeanty, the way I kind of explain it, at least my perspective, and all I have is my perspective, right? I can't speak for other people. When I watch him, I see the same guy I saw in Boise State. The problem is he's doing it 5 yards in the backfield because the offensive line was terrible. But he's still forcing missed tackles. He's still evading that first contact. He's still getting. The problem is the run's only going 2 yards instead of when he was at Boise, he was doing all those things 2 yards downfield and then turning it into 10 or 15 or 20. It sounds like from a lot of the things that I'm seeing, the guy that is in the pole position to be Vegas's head coach, they really want Clint Kubiak. And if you tell me that you can get Kubiak, the Seattle offensive coordinator, in Vegas, the wide zone system that he runs, it mitigates the offensive line a little bit. You want horizontal movement instead of vertical. And so you don't need very good offensive linemen. You just need guys who can get people moving sideways, and then the running back makes them right. It's the same thing that, Miami had a terrible offensive line for so many years with McDaniel, but Achane and Mostert, these guys were able to rip off these chunk runs. Even Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco, right? They're never known for having a good offensive line, but the running back's job in a wide zone scheme is to make the offensive line correct and to, find that gap and go. And so if you put Ashton Jeanty and his vision and his ability to kind of make those single cuts and get vertical in that scheme, yeah, okay. I'm in. I draft him higher than I was drafting him last year, and that made me look like an idiot last year. So amen. So I'm in. I'm with you.
I always bring this up too. Widely regarded, maybe as the best fantasy football player out there, but definitely one of the best, Chad Schroeder, who wins boatloads of cash every single year he plays. I remember a few years ago, well, this is more than a few years ago now, but he got burned by Todd Gurley one year, where Gurley he was healthy, but he sucked, right? And he just was bad all year. And it cost him a lot of money, did not win a lot of money that year. And then what did he do the following year? He bought even harder. He bought in more, and he got more Gurley. And what happened to Gurley that year? Had a career year, his best year as a pro. And Chad won just a boatload, like a filthy amount of money because of that. So that's one of these things. And anytime, and I think like we all need to be recognizant of this. We can't just say, I'll never draft that guy again. He'll never be on one of my teams again. You can't say that because you're paring down the field too much. You are limiting your upside. You are limiting your potential for how good your season can be. You have to look at and I know this is dehumanizing. You have to look at the stats of these guys rather than the person. Like you have to, Bob Harris from Football Guys, divorce the name from the stats. Look at the stats, understand how these guys, when they're proven players coming off a bad year, could mean great things for your fantasy squads. And certainly Genty represents that this year. How do you handle Travis Etienne, Dan? Travis Etienne is probably going back to Jacksonville, but we don't know that for sure. He could be. I was thinking about this the other day. What if he signs with Dallas and they let Javonte Williams go, and then they sign Travis Etienne? This could be a situation where he comes in to be the de facto number one on Jacksonville or another team, or he could be the 1A or the 1B, and he's sharing touches. Like it's such a wide range of outcomes for Travis Etienne. And I think his ADP reflects that. If you look at it, I may have mentioned this earlier on the show, 410, running back 20 right now for Travis Etienne after Harvey and Kyron Williams, right before Cam Skattebo and Quinshon Judkins. Does that feel like the spot that you want to draft Travis Etienne at the end of the fourth round?
Oh yeah, I'm taking it. If you just kind of take a step back from everything, and a lot of times, and you see this a lot in general, we'll find a way to hate on a highly drafted player. So Travis Etienne's a first round pick. If he's not Barry Sanders, then he's a terrible pick. But if you kind of take a step back, 4 years with Jacksonville, 3 seasons he had at least 220 carries. 3 seasons he had at least 1,000 rushing yards. He hit 1,100 twice. He has at least 35 receptions in every year. He has at least 250 receiving yards every single year. He's never had a rushing success rate below 43%. Like, he is a good running back, and Jacksonville, minus Liam Cohen, has not been a place we would consider a good team. They have not had a good offensive line, and he still produces. He's one of those guys where I saw a report with him, the Bears would be interested in him. And if you're telling me that they go from DeAndre Swift to Travis Etienne as a Bears fan, yeah, I'm clicking my heels in the streets, right? So I think that if he stays in Jacksonville, that's fantastic because Liam Cohen is one of the better run game designers in the NFL. I think this year solidified it because that offensive line is not good. It's not talented. And yet we're sitting here and he's got 1,100 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, and 300 receiving and 6 receiving scores. Like, he produced at a level that we want to see. So yeah, 4th round pick, I'm in, because if someone else is going to pay him more, that means that they believe in him too.
That's a great point. You might be getting a floor price for Travis Etienne in drafts right now at the end of the 4th round. Running back 20, which is crazy. Rico Dowdle is a player that showed that he could still be a 1A or a starting running back in the NFL in the limited time that he had the opportunity. He is probably moving on from Carolina. Jonathan Brooks is obviously the spiciest pepper in the gumbo in Carolina, obviously with Chuba Hubbard there as well. But Dowdle could move on, maybe back to Dallas. If they let Javonte Williams go, maybe Dowdle is the guy who comes in and he's the lead guy there. A lot of range of outcomes here. Running back 29 at the 8-11. Rhamondre Stevenson and Kyle Monangai right above him. Tony Pollard, Blake Corum right below him. Starting to like Pollard, I beg your pardon, starting to like Dowdle here a little bit at the end of the 8th round, given how much he could pay off if he lands a decent contract somewhere else other than Carolina.
So I had a fun tweet, and this reminded me. Running backs over the last 2 seasons, back-to-back, with 1,000 rushing yards and 200 receiving yards. There's 5 of them. Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, James Cook, Rico Dowdle. That's it. That's it. Those are the guys. So, and look, is he one of those guys? No, he's not. But is he above when he's given opportunities, he produces. And, for whatever reason, Dallas, and we'll sit here and say Dallas probably made the right choice because Javonte had a really good year, but for a while it looked like Dowdle was going to take that job from Chuba Hubbard. And then for whatever reason, Chuba wrestled it back at the end of the year. I think he's a very good player. I think he's a player who's capable of, if he lands in the right situation and there's a team that's dedicated to giving him 40-50% of the backfield, he can be productive. You said RB29 was the price. I'd probably, if Monangai is going right in front of him, I'd probably want Monangai more.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to stop you right there. Let's play a quick would you rather, okay? With all these players going right around Dowdle. Would you rather have Kyle Monangai or Rico Dowdle? You're saying Monangai.
Monangai.
Okay. Rico Dowdle or Rhamondre Stevenson?
Rhamondre.
Rico Dowdle or Tony Pollard?
Depending on where he goes, Rico Dowdle.
They're going back to back.
Well, I'm saying we're like landing spot. If you tell me that, so if we plug Rico Dowdle, you put him on, let's just use Miami as the example. If you tell me he's going to be the hammer back in Miami, okay, I'll take Dowdle.
Okay, so what if you're drafting now where we don't know? You would take Dowdle, right? Because
I'd probably take Dowdle. Yeah, because I know that Tajay Spears is in Tennessee.
Okay, Dowdle or Blake Corum?
Corum, because I think Kyron Williams is overrated.
Okay, and then this is a fun one. Well, actually, I'll do two. I'll do three more, actually. Okay, Rico Dowdle or Bashal Tutin, who could stand to profit quite a bit if ETN does move on.
Oh, let's play the game. If ETN is in Jacksonville, Dowdle. If ETN's gone, Tutin. I know that's a cop out.
Dan, I'm going to put you to the fire here.
Fine.
I'll
take Tutin.
Yeah, I would do the same thing because of the upside. Because
it's explosiveness too. We know he's fast and efficient, and we saw it.
Okay. Rico Dowdle or Woody Marks?
Dowdle.
I agree. And then the last one, Rico Dowdle or the rookie, Jonah Coleman?
Dowdle.
I'm going to say Dowdle as well. So there you go. So we're of one mind here.
It's calibrated correctly. We're in the right spot.
Right. Okay. I want to do wide receivers right now. Move on from running backs. George Pickens is another player. I don't think he gets out of Dallas. I think the Cowboys gave up too much and saw too much from him to let him go. I think he gets franchise tag. Now, I guess the concern here is if he does get franchise tag, which I know Pickens does not want, and the stuff that he has had going on with his mentals, for lack of a better term, that this could be bad. If I could just see him being like, no, I'm not playing on the franchise tag. The cost to acquire George Pickens right now, wide receiver 11 at the 212. Is the juice worth the squeeze, knowing the bad that could happen for you soaking a second-round pick here?
Yeah, I think so. I think Dak Prescott, Dallas as a general entity is going to chuck the ball. We now have proof of concept that George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb can coexist with each other. I think, and Pickens is so talented. Even back when he was drafted, he was one of those guys who it's like, if he didn't tear his ACL, he was the best receiver in the class. He fell because of that and character. I think especially we could operate no matter what he's going to get paid, whether it's short-term or long-term, the franchise tag is not a little amount of money. I would be concerned, fast forward to August, if he's still holding out because of the tag. At that point, I'm concerned. But if I'm operating today, I'll pay a second round for Pickens for the talent.
And I think we also have to understand too how good he was when Lamb went down.
Right.
There's that upside aspect of it as well. I don't draft scared, so I'd be in on Pickens there as well. AJ Brown. Two-part question here, Dan. Percentage chance he is a Philadelphia Eagle week 1 of next season. And then the second part, does it matter? Because if he is traded or moved to another team, he's probably going to be a huge focal point for that team's offense. A.J. Brown right now, wide receiver 13 at the 305, seems to me like a spot you want to buy. We found out, I think earlier this afternoon, the Packers quarterback coach, Sean Mannion, is going to be the offensive coordinator for Philadelphia this year. I don't know enough about him to say, oh, this is how he's going to use the receivers. I don't know. But I can tell you that A.J. Brown is going in the mid-third round. How are you handling him there?
First part, I do not believe he will be an Eagle. We've been going. It was the end of the playoffs, we're like going into the Super Bowl 2 years ago. He was reading the book on the sideline and they had to, oh no, that's just, he always reads a book on the sideline. Like he's definitely not reading self-encouragement, self-help things because he's upset. Like, and then they win a Super Bowl. We're like, okay, yeah, I guess. Sure. Why not? That makes sense. And then this year, it's just this constant string of things. And at a certain point in time, if, you can hand the team over to Devonta Smith. Like you can use whatever capital you can get for A.J. Brown to bolster your group, your wide receiver core. So I think it's probably run its course, I have to imagine. And even if he stays, like I'm not a Jalen Hurts person. I know that I just don't. I think he's a very limited quarterback who's very good with a good team around him. And that's not a bad thing. I just, for fantasy, the rushing touchdowns get him there. I just don't think he's a good quarterback, and that's me. But if A.J. Brown goes somewhere else, like let's say New England gets frisky and decides that they want to add him to the equation. Okay, sure. Like if Mike Vrabel could keep Stephon Diggs happy, and it's first year and it's a honeymoon.
Or Drake May. He's got to feed A.J. Brown and Stephon Diggs. Oh my God.
Yeah, right. He'll win the MVP next year. I can promise you if he's got those two. I will a third round pick. Yeah, he's talented. Like he is, I think, a top 10 receiver when his mind is right. I just don't know that his mind can get right in Philadelphia right now.
I want to get back to A.J. Brown in a second. The fact that you said you think he's on a different team, Devonta Smith, wide receiver 21 at the 502, does that mean he's a screaming buy for you?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Drafted him. I think every best ball team I've done so far, I think I've drafted Devonta Smith. I'm not even like that's where, because I anticipate him being the one in Philadelphia.
They got to have another option. I mean, to me, like if Brown moves on, does Dallas Goedert become that much more appealing to you, or does he not factor in?
Well, he's a free agent. I think Goedert. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, if they bring him back, but I just think, even taking Sean Mannion, like Green Bay wanted their identity, and it's so frustrating because they have all these really talented weapons. Their identity is a run first team. So I think Saquon Barkley, like if he's going to be in the second round, yeah, okay, I'll try it this year. I didn't draft him last year because of the workload the year before. Well, he had less of a workload, and if they can adjust the offensive line, yeah, okay, I'm in.
I'm going to give you 5 teams. You tell me which team is most likely, or if there's another team that you think is more likely than any of these. Who is A.J. Brown playing for next year? I'll give you 6 teams. Philadelphia, New England, Buffalo, Denver, Baltimore, Los Angeles. Pick one of those teams that you think Brown is going to be on, or do you think it's going to be somebody else other than those?
Which Los Angeles?
Oh, Chargers. I'm sorry, Chargers.
I would say Buffalo.
Buffalo. Okay. All right.
I just think they need to make a move. And he's the kind of guy you pulled it off with Stephon Diggs once. I think if there's a wild card team, we talked about him earlier. Why not Cleveland?
Oh my God, Brown. Yeah, he might retire rather than go to Cleveland. But yeah, I get
it. Short targets. He's a guy who takes him the distance. Like he is the fail-safe. He does what Jerry Jeudy can't. Jerry Jeudy catches and falls down half the time. Brown at least could take those little slants and in routes, and he could take them chunk gains.
You know what I would love to see, and this won't happen, but it's going to be fun to think about. The Bills trade with Philly to get A.J. Brown, and then they sign free agent Mike Evans on a 1-year contract. Ooh. And Brandon Beane flips the bird to anybody who is questioning his chutzpah and his can-do with being the GM of the Bills, and Josh Allen is throwing to not only Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir, but A.J. Brown and Mike Evans next year. That would be fun. Okay.
Prep the Super Bowl.
Rookie wide receivers. We've talked a little bit about Lemon. We've talked a little bit about Tyson. Carnell Tate, how do you feel about him? If you were to rank these receivers, not knowing which teams they're going to be on, if you were to rank these receivers, and by the way, they're all basically going at the same spot, right around between wide receiver 23, wide receiver 28 of the Never Too Early FFPC Best Ball Draft. Tate, Tyson, Lemon, how would you rank them?
So for me, I've actually, these are three of the ones I've watched. I have it just pure film. We're not taking testing. We're not doing anything with it. I have it Lemon, and then Tate is right on his heels, and then like a little baby half gap Tyson.
Okay.
I think Tyson is the most physically gifted. I think that he's going to have the most impressive testing numbers. He's the one who can be like your true game-breaking X, size, speed, all that stuff. I thought he was a little bit rough around the edges with his route running. I think he had a lot of body catches. He's dynamic once he has the ball, but like he just wasn't as clean. Tate is a strider. He's big. His catch radius is awesome. He's able to get on top of coverage, but we can't sit here and say that having Jeremiah Smith on the field with him didn't help. Yeah. Like, he's seeing a lot of one-on-one on the backside, like, because everyone is taking away Jeremiah Smith. But to say that like, I still think Tate probably has like the most aesthetically pleasing wide receiver film, I think. And Lemon is just kind of like, he's going to be a slot. And I think that's going to cause him to kind of probably dip a little bit. He's not very big, but he catches everything. He knows how to get open. He knows how to find his zones. And he's probably the most dynamic after the catch. Like, he's a player when he catches the ball, he knows where his blocks are. He knows how to get through the seams and how to kind of wade through the stuff to get downfield. I liked Lemon the most. I think he's going to be the most reliable. And like I said, Tate and Tyson were just right on his heels. I think all three are probably top 15 picks in the NFL draft.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. And the fact that you're saying this now, I wonder if like they're actually going to all be, closer to the top 10 by the time the draft rolls around, because we see prospects like this move up in value as we get closer and closer. We're basically 3 months away, less than 3 months away from the draft. Wow. It's crazy how it's sneaking up on us. All right. The last wide receiver I want to talk about before we move on to tight ends, Alec Pierce is a free agent. The last few days, I've heard a lot of people talking about, they think he's going to re-sign with Indianapolis. And that's fine if that's the case. I mean, Michael Pittman could be a cap casualty there. They obviously don't have Adonai Mitchell anymore. Pierce is being drafted as wide receiver 43 in the 10th round. I heard he was going at like the 4th and 5th round. I don't know what drafts those were at, but wide receiver 43 in the 10th round seems to me a good gamble to make, given that if he gets a 3 or 4 year deal from somebody that's going to be paying him, 8 figures a year, that could be very beneficial to his fantasy value. And if he re-signs with Indy, or if he just continues his role as a lid lifter, 10th round and a best ball, I can get on board with that. Your thoughts on Pierce and where he plays his football next season?
I live in Indianapolis, and so I've probably watched more Alec Pierce than like a lot of people, good, bad, or otherwise, right? I mean, it's just what's on TV when if I have red zone and then I have a game playing, right? He really, really, really took a good step this year. Like, and he wasn't just being used as like a vertical, like, hey man, you're just going to run wind sprints and we might get it to you, we might not. Like, he was running more nuanced routes. I really think he's kind of become a more well-rounded player in the last couple of years. And so with that, that's a gamble I'll take. I mean, Tennessee needs a wide receiver. We had talked about, he'd be a guy who's really interesting with like a Kansas City, right? They have, Xavier Worthy and they have Rashee Rice, but they don't really have that big body guy. He can do that for them. Just kind of looking, the New York Giants need a compliment for Malik Neighbors, right? I mean, you have Neighbors, maybe Wandale comes back, but he's a slot. New Orleans Saints could use someone beside Chris Olave. So I think there's a lot of teams. There's just so many teams right now that need a wide receiver. And I think he's a guy who, and if the Colts decide to keep him, then that probably means Pittman is gone, like you said. I just think that he is the general like consensus with him is, oh, he's just a stretch Z, like outside straight line burner, but like he's become a better receiver than that. And so I'll take the swing in the 5th round. Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with you. And this is 10th round, by the way, with Pierce.
Oh, then yeah. Yep. Signed, sealed, delivered. Stamp it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on this for sure. Moving on to tight ends, let's talk about your guy, Colston Loveland. My concern with Loveland is not his role in the offense. It's not how good is he going to be in just his second year in the league. It's, my God, everybody wants Colston Loveland on their team this year, and I don't know if I'm willing to pay the price. McBride, 105. Bowers, 110. The next tight end, Colston Loveland at the 211. Tight end premium format, we need to consider that as well. Late second round. As a Bears guy, Dan, are you on board with Loveland's late second round ADP and tight end premium formats like the FFPC?
Yes. Yes. I mean, so when you watch him, and I think if I were to go through, if we could put stuff up on the screen, I had a tweet. It was Colston Loveland running a route from the slot, and just the subtle the kid is 21 years old. He's 6'6", he's 250 pounds. And the way he sets up his route on his stem, the way he expands the corner to get him to flip his hips so that he can cut underneath and wall him off and catch the pass. It was in the red zone. Everyone, we're always going to be chasing because of Ben Johnson. We're going to be chasing who's the next Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's going to have that role. And the truth is there isn't one. But if there is the guy who's going to be their number one target hog, it's Colston Loveland. He already did it as a rookie. I don't think that even if Roma Dunze was healthy, I think that Colston Loveland still would have taken over the role that he did because he's such a dynamic weapon and he's always going to be used as a mismatch, especially with how much they're doing 12 personnel stuff. Yeah, tight end 3, I'm in 100%, no doubt. I'll draft him.
I think I'm with you on that. And I think this tier is not going to be a top 2 tier this year. I think it's going to be a top 3. I think you can throw Loveland into that as well. I think he moves up. The tight end 4 is Tyler Warren, and he's not going until the 4 or 5 turn. So I think there's a significant drop off there. And then you get into Harold Fannin, Tucker Kraft, so on and so forth there. One other tight end I want to bring up with you, Sam Laporta. Had the back injury that we thought was not that serious. Then all of a sudden he was on IR, and then all of a sudden he wasn't coming back the rest of the year. New offensive coordinator in Detroit, Drew Petzing, who obviously made Trey McBride a super stud in Arizona. Are you concerned with the back injury? Are you concerned with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Isaac Tesla, Jamison Williams? When it comes to Laporta, and I'll bring this up, in the Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament, tight end 8 at the 603, right after Pitts, but a good round ahead of Rhamondre Gadsden.
Tight end 8, I probably am fine. I think back injuries, I don't trust back injuries. Right. Just knowing like how important your core
Dan,
is.
I'll say this. Sorry to interrupt. I always say this every time we talk about a back injury. Nobody has ever said, I used to have a bad back. Mm-hmm. Nobody's ever said
right.
That. And I think that's true with football players.
Now, for me, at tight end 8, it's not out of control. Like you said, Drew Petzing, Trey McBride, he's part of that Stefanski tree, right? The tight end, more often than not, they're going to target as the primary read in the passing attack. So if right now, I'm probably taking the bite at the apple at tight end 8, knowing that he could see this huge target share. I haven't had a chance really, and I won't for probably a while. That's the beauty of, writing about stuff for redraft. I could sit down and try and parse through it all, but for right now, I'll take the swing. I think there's a world where all these guys can kind of coexist because they were doing it for a little bit last year. They did it the year before. I think Petzing, like I was critical of it when I heard who it was, but that's just because of some of the names that were still out there. And then you kind of live in it a little bit. And it's like, well, how much does having Kyler Murray at quarterback hamstring you? He won't throw between the numbers. So, I think that it could work. I'm open to it working. And if Laporta is tight end 8 and I'm choosing between Laporta at tight end 8 or Gadsden at tight end 9, I'll take Laporta at tight end 8 because I've seen him do it before. He was the tight end 1 as a rookie. That's rarefied air.
And not only that, but I mean, like he's getting an OC that I mean, obviously Trey McBride is better than Laporta, but his OC featured the tight end. Like this has got to be good. It's got to be good news for Laporta. The back injury is the only concern right now in that. I also have this kind of sad news for the Bears here, at least from what we were talking about before. The Bears are not receiving 2 third-round compensatory picks for Ian Cunningham leaving because Matt Bryant is considered the lead football executive in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's what I had heard. That's unfortunate,
but that's awful.
Still,
I don't like that at all. I mean, it's good for the Packers, obviously, but that stinks for the Bears. They did everything right, you know.
Again, there's 32 GM jobs. I'm never going to disparage a guy for doing what's best for him and taking one of them.
Right. Okay. Harold Fannin, tight end 5 at the 503. Tom Smith is asking that on YouTube right now. So Fannin behind Warren, ahead of Kraft, tight end 5, 503. That's where Harold Fannin Jr. is going. We got time. Yeah, we got a few minutes to talk quarterbacks here real quick. Let's continue with the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams, I was of the opinion that when the Bears drafted this guy, I didn't think it would be a magic thing in year 1. And then when Ben Johnson took over in year 2, I'm like, it's going to take a while. This is not just all of a sudden going to click. Well, it kind of didn't, but he showed some stuff earlier in the season as well. And I'll say this about Caleb Williams. I feel like this dude makes some of the craziest throws that only a few people in the NFL can make. And he makes them, and he makes them with regularity, right? He also makes some of the most boneheaded decisions, some of the worst throws that I've seen any quarterback in the NFL make. I am of the opinion, and Dan, I think you would agree with me, those easy ones, the stuff that comes with experience, that comes with reps. I think he's not going to turn into another Brett Favre where he's constantly slinging it into tight windows, always trusting his arm. That's not his game. He's a smart guy. He's going to figure it out. And he's really, really talented with his legs. He's sneaky fast. Nobody talks about how good he is with his legs. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but very few people talk about how good he is with his legs. Now, I will say, we have seen this before where players come on 1 year and they make this meteoric leap, but then they take a step back the second year. I think there could be a little bit of a step back this year, but the future is way bright for Caleb Williams right now and that Bears offense in the NFL. I'm very bullish on it. I think he's going to be great. Quarterback 8 at the 707. Yeah, I don't know if I'm on board with that, but if you tell me, like, look, Balky, I'm dead serious. I have to take Caleb Williams in the mid-7th of all my drafts. That's how I'm going to make my nut. That's how I'm going to build my fantasy landscape this year. I have no problem with it. I'm very bullish on Caleb Williams. I assume you are too.
Yeah, so the reason my thing with Caleb Williams is, and you know, I'm Bears fan, so everybody, I'm putting on rose-colored glasses right now.
Right.
What he was asked to do this year essentially was, first of all, as a rookie, the Shane Waldron offense does 2 things. It either throws the ball 40 yards downfield or it's a screen. So his completion percentage was somewhat inflated by that. He took a ton of sacks. For a lot of people, pressure to sack rate is like if a quarterback gets sacked a lot on their pressures, they can't fix it. They're terrible, right? Well, Caleb Williams fixed it, right? He single digit, I think, or he was like 10% pressure to sack rate after being 28% as a rookie. So he cut it in half and then some. The difference, I think, and this offseason is going to be huge. He played under center more last year than he ever did in his life. And so under center, and I'm trying not to get too specific in the weeds here. There's footwork, there's timing. One of the things that I think has kind of hurt quarterback development going back to high school, and I was a high school coach for 12 years, is when we go into shotgun, guys are at the top of their drop, and so they're able to throw the ball faster because everything is in front of them and they could just see it. Well, if you're taking a 5-step drop, you're trying to get to depth, and then you're also trying to look and see, like, is the defense I saw when I snapped the ball the same as when I'm at the top of my drop? Where do I go with this? And so, like, you can practice that stuff, but, like, he was doing it in real time. Ben Johnson is a psychopath. Like, there is no doubt that he, on the last day of this season, handed all of the players, specifically Caleb Williams, a binder of, here's what you're going to work on this offseason so that when we come back at the spring, in the summer, we're making progress. I think there's a world where Caleb Williams' big jump is this year 3. I think that it's going to be, we know what we need to work on. We know what we need to fix. Was the completion percentage great? No. Did he miss a lot of throws that he shouldn't have missed? Yes, absolutely. One of them cost him the Rams game. Before he throws the pick to Cam Curl, he misses a first down flat route to Rhamondre, a speed out. Nobody remembers it because of the pick, because DJ Moore, whatever. Sorry, Bears fan came out. But I think if you're going to, I think that I'm bought in Dynasty 100%, redraft 100%, best ball 100%. I think that it, again, going back to kind of what we talked about with ETN, it's easy to pick on the number 1 pick. It's easy to sit here. Everyone loves to hate on the top guy, especially when Jaden Daniels was rookie of the year and Drake May is an MVP candidate in year 2. I think Caleb Williams is more physically gifted as a passer than both of them. And also he was 3rd in the NFL in 20+ mile per hour runs this year. So, okay, cool. Let's do it. Like, if that's the guy that I'm going to bat for at QB 8, I think he could be top 5 in fantasy. I think he could be top 3 in fantasy next year.
Yeah, 100%. And that would not surprise me at all if he is. And part of the reason, Loveland, Burden, and maybe Odunze as well, which I would have loved to get in more. We're up against it, Dan. This has been so much fun talking ball with you tonight. For anybody who is wondering where they can consume more content, obviously they want to connect with you on the X machine at Fornek DF, and then FTN, RotoBaller, Roto Underworld, right?
And PFSN, yeah, Pro Football. I picked up them this year too. Basically, if you Google fantasy football, you got like a chance of finding me. I'm all over the place. And for, like I said, prospect stuff, feel free, follow me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I'd like to do a lot of draft content. That's probably my favorite part of the year, is the off season. So by all means, and this is an invite, hop on, tell me I'm an idiot. You won't be the first and you won't be the last.
and that sometimes can really open up our minds. Like,
exactly.
I always said, like, don't live in your own echo chamber in fantasy football. It will make you a better player to embrace and really try to understand opposing viewpoints, because it's going to make you a better drafter and just a better player in general. I want to remind everybody, myffpc.com, FFPC Dynasty and Empire Orphans there. The Never Too Early Best Ball and Never Too Early Superflex Best Ball tournaments available there. The Big Gorilla and the Baby Gorilla. Win $1 million. Draft in January right now at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Dan, this has been great. We'll have you back again soon. Thank you so much. Enjoy the Super Bowl. You got a prediction, Seahawks or Patriots?
Seahawks, but I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people are saying it will be. I think New England matches up well, but I think Seahawks are just more talented.
I think you are right, and I would take the Patriots plus 4.5 right now if I had to. I want to thank Dan Fornek and Sean Engel, our producer tonight. We'll be back at 7:00 next Thursday with our Super Bowl preview episode. Sports Gambling Podcast, Sean Green will join us. That's going to be a lot of fun. For Sean Engel, for Dan Fornek, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. Have a great weekend, everybody. Talk with you next Thursday.